So today MPs will be voting on whether or not to accept the terms of the Prime Minister's Brexit deal. But that deal was signed with the EU all the way back in November. A lot has happened since then. Let's speak now to Joe Owen, Associate Director of the Institute for Government, about exactly what's in that deal. Joe, morning to you. Obviously, we've given our viewers a broad brushstroke reminder of what is in that deal. So why has it proved so controversial? Is it all about the backstop, really?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think if the reports of the size of defeat that are splashed all over the newspapers this morning are true, the Prime Minister may feel a little bit hard done by, right? Because if you look at the components of that deal, on citizens' rights, there's nowhere really in Parliament saying that we've been too generous or too unfair. On the money, there are parts of the Conservative Party that think we're giving away too much for too little, but there's probably a majority in Parliament for the financial settlement. I mean, there's a majority in the Parliament for transition, when you think that it was Labour that first called for it. So you really are just focusing down on this backstop, and that is proving to be the big problem. But I think it is right when the Prime Minister says that any deal that gets through Parliament that becomes the UK-EU withdrawal agreement will look very substantively like this. The question is, are there clauses here or there that can be added that will make all the difference to some of those groups of MPs?
So, Joe, take us through then what we can expect to happen today, including, of course, once we know which amendments the Speaker is allowing MPs to vote on, and what impact they might have on the shape and direction of the deal.
I think that's right. The amendments could prove to be really important. We've seen some go down which look like they've got number 10's fingerprints on them to try and see, actually, if we were to put a 1-year limit on the backstop, would that change MPs' minds? Is there a majority for that? And if the Prime Minister can find a majority for one of those amendments that does look like it's a game changer, she will feel emboldened to go back to Brussels and say, look, the task for both of us here is to get a deal that will make its way through Westminster, and based on this vote, on this amendment, I can tell you that this could be a game changer. So she will be trying to use these amendments to see if she can bolster her negotiating leverage to go back to Brussels. So they could prove to be really important. I think one of the things that the Prime Minister will be most wary of is if this deal goes down with a thumping defeat and there is no sense of what could change that would persuade MPs to back it in the longer term. That will be the real risk when it comes to about 7 o'clock. Between 7 and 10 o'clock this evening, we'll start to see votes on amendments and then ultimately the deal.
And yes, anything beyond 7 to 10 o'clock this evening, well, we're in the realms of crystal ball gazing. We're just looking at Amber Rudd arriving at Downing Street for that cabinet meeting as I talk to you, Joe. Yeah, crystal ball gazing, really, because, what could happen next? Who could take control of this process? And of course, what role Labour plays in all of what follows on? That's an unknown as well, isn't it?
Exactly right. We know the kind of broad process because of some of the amendments that have gone down in recent weeks and what's in the EU Withdrawal Act that was passed earlier this year. So we know that the Prime Minister is going to have to make or lay a motion in the next 3 days, so probably Monday next week, 3 sitting days from when the vote takes place. But what we don't know is what that motion will say. We don't know how Labour will respond, whether we will see them put down a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister and the government. And we also don't know how the EU will respond, whether they will say, actually, maybe we do need to give some ground in some of the areas where we have stood so steadfast until now. That seems unlikely. But yeah, ultimately, there are so many actors in this that have a few big decisions to make if at 10 o'clock this evening we find out that the deal has not been successful.
OK, Joe, thank you very much. Joe Owen from the Institute for Government, thank you very much for your thoughts on the day.